Hello and welcome to Codebreak Album Club episode 2. My name's Carl Miller. I'm the singer in Codebreak. Gareth, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yep, Gareth Hirons, will drop pants for food, bass in Codebreak.
Andy?
Andy Hyam, percussion, I'm going for this week.
And Gary?
Gary Bagley, lead shredder.
Also, I said vocals. My job is general dog's body as well. So for this episode, the next person to pick the album of choice is Andy. So over to you, Andy.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I've chosen an absolute classic for my choice this week. It was between this and Rain and Blood by Slayer, and I thought that might be a little bit too metal. Maybe I'll choose that. We do like a metal one maybe in the future. But anyway, I've chosen this little beauty here, Bad Religion's Suffer, which is an album that is very important to me. Changed lots of things for me. I'll go into a little bit more about what it means to me in a minute. But anyway, Bad Religion, as you probably know, or maybe you don't, are from Southern California. I'll take that down. I was a little bit silly with it, like all the way through. They are from Southern California. They were around in the early 80s with the core members of Brett Gurewitz. Who else? It was Jay Bentley and do you know what?
Greg Graffin.
Sorry, Greg Graffin. Do you know what? I thought I'd remember all that. Yeah, Greg Graffin. So they had a little bit of a go in the early 80s, recorded an album called How Could Hell Be Any Worse? And then, they got a little bit disillusioned, sort of broke up for a bit, and did another album, which is synth. It's got a lot of synths on. Do you know what? To this day, I still don't own that album. It was called Back to the Known, I think, was it?
Into the Unknown?
Into the Unknown.
Yeah, Into the
Back
Unknown.
To the Known was when you went punk again.
So, and then they split up for a bit, and then they got back together, and I think it was Greg Graffin who got back in touch with Brett Gurewitz, or Mr. Brett, as he's sometimes known, because I think he had a bit of a, runaway drug habit. But anyway, they got back together, they recorded Suffer, and I thought at the time, and I heard that it was like a game changer. It completely changed my idea of punk rock. And I just want to read you a quote by Fat Mike, actually, saying the album to change everything. And I think that's a pretty good description of it. Was there anything else I wanted to say about it? Just a lineup for the album was Greg Graffin, vocals, Brett Gurewitz guitar, Jay Bentley bass, and Pete Finestone on the drums and Greg Hetson on guitar. So, Carl, let's hear your opinion.
Okay. I first heard Bad Religion on the Punkorama compilation. I think it was the very first one, and it was the very first track, and it was a track called Do What You Want. And that was the first time I heard them. That came out in like 1994, so I probably heard them 94, 95, 96, something like that. Regard to this record, I really like this record. In terms of what Andy was saying, it is a game changer. What I like about it is the vocals. I've always liked Greg Graffin's vocals because for a punk band, he can actually sing.
Yeah.
He's actually got a really good voice. And from what I understand, looking into him, he was once asked to be a judge on American Idol because he was that sort of well thought of in terms of being a good vocalist. It's not my favourite Bad Religion album. Okay. It's a good Bad Religion album, and it did definitely set a standard. But I preferred them sort of going after this with like albums like No Control. And a good place to start with them actually is like I think they've got like a compilation record called All Ages, which is like a best of the sort of their earlier stuff. what I would say is that it is a good record, and there's some particular songs I've sort of earmarked as songs I really like on the record. The song called "Best for You," which I like because it's a little bit slower. The album it really speeds along. It really sort of goes for it, and that's a bit in the record where it sort of slows up. I do the title track "Suffer." I think is a brilliant song. Really simple, but it gives you everything you need in it. I also like the song called "Give You Nothing," which has a brilliant sort of breakdown section in it towards the end of it. And my favourite track on the album is a song called "Delirium of Disorder." I love the vocals, that the 3-part vocal in the chorus of it,
harmonies and stuff.
the harmonies. Yeah. And one thing I've always liked about Bad Religion is the lyrics. I've always thought that their lyrics are incredibly like strong and powerful. I'm just going to read a quick sort of example of the lyrics from the song "Delirium of Disorder." Life is the sieve through which my anarchy strains, resolving itself into works. Chaos is the score upon which reality is written, the timeless whirring gyroscopic chord. Now, you don't get many punk bands using big words like that. So for that, I've always got a lot of respect for Bad Religion. Definitely a gateway band. I think that they're a band that sort of you would listen to and you could get into other sort of similar type of bands. I think if you listen to Bad Religion, you could maybe get into bands like The Adolescents or even sort of Agent Orange, sort of like that Southern California sound. And they are sort of the pioneers of it, really, Bad Religion, yeah. I would say. I do think they got better as they went on. I think they wrote better songs in terms of structures and differences in the songs. But "Suffer" is a great place to start. It is a great album, and it just from hearing that Punkorama CD at the time, it introduced me to a lot of bands that Bad Religion helped. So like the likes of Rancid, NoFX, Pennywise, The Offspring, and the whole Epitaph Records thing as well come from Bad Religion as well. So yeah, they're my thoughts on it. Yeah, it was a good choice, Andy, and I hadn't listened to it in a while, and it wasn't as good as I remembered it when I first heard it. But maybe that's because I'm in a weird kind of way a bit desensitized. But yeah, definitely a very strong pick.
Okay, excellent. I like to. I'll come back to your little points about the lyrics when it's my turn to talk about it. But it's a good point. Gary.
My kind of introduction to Bad Religion was Stranger Than Fiction, and then I kind of got the All Ages compilation and some of the albums just before Stranger Than Fiction, but I'd never really listened to full albums from Bad Religion for anything really pre Recipe for Hate, and so I kind of came into this kind of knowing a few of the songs because they were on the compilation, but I've never heard the full album as an album. And my first thought was, it doesn't sound like it's 32 years old. Mm-hmm. It's very, you could put it into a playlist of current kind of pop punk bands, and it certainly wouldn't sound aged in any way. And then you kind of think about how Bad Religion progressed from that earlier stage, and listening to like how could hell be any worse, and that is very much a kind of a classic punk sound and song structure. It doesn't even sound hardcore, it sounds very punk, just like classic punk sounding. Yeah. And obviously down to the kind of the recording quality as well. And then after they did the Into the Unknown, and then they came back, and starting from Suffer, it kind of completely changed their sound. That was the way that they kind of found their sound on Suffer. And from there, they had like that 3-album run of Suffer, No Control, and Against the Grain that were very much that kind of refining that way of making songs. Again, production, brilliant again, compared to a lot of albums that were recorded around then. But having that same structure of having quick paced songs, short, had a bit of a solo in there, but everything was kind of wrapped around with those harmonies, which you just didn't hear that kind of harmonizing in punk songs up until then. And obviously, like Carl said, that's kind of been the blueprint for a lot of bands from that point. So you can see why they've become so kind of iconic and so referenced over the years based on that. Yeah. And then obviously kind of going on from there. And I think one of the fact that they kind of did that 3-album run, I was looking at just about an hour and a half worth of music for that 3-album run, but it's 37 songs that they wrote in 3 years. So it's it's prolific songwriting. But I think in terms of them kind of finding that sound, I also think that their greatest asset being that the fact that they wrapped all these songs in harmonies was kind of also the biggest weakness, because a lot of what I can imagine is a lot of people who listen to Bad Religion, their favorite album will be essentially the first thing they heard by them, because they're not a band that has lots of different sounds. They have a kind of set blueprint for how they make a song. And even when they kind of started changing that after Against the Grain, when they kind of got to Generator and they started lengthening the songs and slightly changing the pace of the songs, it was still very much that kind of same formula of having the harmonies wrapped up and having that kind of lush sound. So that's why, again, like, my favourite album is Stranger Than Fiction, because that's where I came into it. But going back, they have got like solid songs all the way through from Suffer, essentially. And there are some decent songs on How Could Hell Be Any Worse, but it's not as they're not as consistent until Suffer hits, and they do have a consistent batch of songs which you just you can kind of grasp onto, even though they are kind of similar in terms of structures of other songs. So yeah, it's I think the recording's really good, the playing is really solid, the artwork is obviously iconic as well for that album in particular. I think of any kind of album art that they did, that is the one that I always remember. It is iconic artwork. And like Carl said, the lyrics were just very intellectual. They were kind of, graduates and professors, and they were kind of collegiate kind. So Greg Graffin's lyrics are very intellectual, but always kind of based around anti-government, anti-religion, anti-corporation. Also touches on just humanity's less appealing characteristics as well. So there are things about human greed, not just in corporation, in multi-corporate organizational elements, but human greed from a societal level as well. But yeah, they do have just like solid songs. My favorite songs of the album are, oddly enough, not the ones that I'd heard already, because I've listened to this quite a few times now, and I've really gotten into 1000 More Fools, and I think Carl mentioned it, Give You Nothing. Brilliant song structure on Give You Nothing. It's to me, it's those are the standouts.
Brilliant. Right, that was a nice, nice thought about the album. Just before I move on to Gareth, I was just thinking, Gary, what you said. I think their influence on everyone else in the punk rock world is immeasurable. It's just with the harmonies, because as I'll say a little bit more in a minute, but before they came along, it was very like sort of anarcho punk and shouty, and then they came along and just blew everything, and just it was like, what, punk with harmonies and melodies and everything. It was just sorry, Gareth. So thanks for that, Gary. Anyway, Gareth, what did you think?
Well, most of what I've got sort of prepared to say has to do with A, the harmonies, and B, a quote from Fat Mike, that summed up its position in the canon. See, I have to make a bit of an embarrassing confession for the audience. You guys will all know this, but I'm not very well versed in hardcore for the bass player in a hardcore band. So a lot of this is new to me. And one thing I can say, coming from my unique, slightly backwards perspective on the whole thing, is that I put this on. I've never heard it before. And I thought, I've heard this before. And it's because the sound has carried through into the American punk sound since then. It's such an influential album, particularly sort of the song Suffer. First thing that struck me on that is it opens with minor chords. And minor chords were not necessarily a sort of a punk thing, especially not sort of a poppier punk thing at that time. So this is, just very subtly changing the game in a lot of different ways, I think. It's not quite what I would have expected from a band called Bad Religion, because there's hummable tunes and boppable beats and that kind of thing. But they do actually talk about bad religion and religion being bad at times. So fair enough. It's not just a clever title. My favourite songs, I started off really liking Forbidden Beat, and now I don't like that one as much. I don't know whether that was just the one that hit me immediately, and then the rest of them came afterwards. What Can You Do is probably my favourite. That one's worked well. A lot of questions in song titles on this album. What Can You Do? How Much Is Enough? And perhaps my favourite, just When. When. So I think it's What Can You Do? Suffer. And I actually like You Are the Government, the opener. Between that and 1,000 More Fools, which is the second one, kind of tied for third. I really enjoyed it, and I felt like I was learning stuff, albeit stuff that people have already mentioned or that Andy's about to mention. So,
cool, thanks, Gareth. It's a nice little review of it there. Bear with me, I'll try to keep this not too long, because I could probably, if you give me the chance, I could talk about this album forever. Anyway, cast your minds, if you can, back to 1988. Yeah, I think it come out in 88, didn't it? Right, yeah. So younger me went to see a band called Creator, thrash bands, at the Royal Court in Liverpool. That night, the singer out of Creator had a Bad Religion or the Crossbuster one. First time I'd ever seen it. And I remember looking at his t-shirts thinking, wow, what's that? Is that some sort of just anti-religious statements, or is it a band or what? Long story short, enjoyed the concert, went out the next day to probe, found Bad Religion's album, Suffer, bought it, took it home, and when I lived at home, in my mum's house, in my room there was a little platform type of thing where the stairs come up. Have you ever seen them in someone's house and it covers the stairs anyway? So it was a bit of solid anyway. So I had my record player on there. So whenever I got a record, I'd stack them on there, and it also doubled in them days as the stage dive off from there onto my bed. So there was 2 albums I bought when I was 17, going on 18, and one of that I put on, and as soon as the needle hit the record, I was on top of that stage, diving off onto my bed. So Bad Religion Suffer was one of them, and Slayer's Rain and Blood was the other, because at that time, as soon as the needle hit the record, I was like, my God, what's that? That's absolutely amazing. I absolutely love it. So yeah, put Bad Religion on. You Are the Government come on. And I was away. And then when I'd finally stopped all that messing around, I took the lyric sheet out, and I thought, wow, I've never even seen half of these words before. So that was my cue to go and find a dictionary. Think, what do half of these words even mean? And just discovering it from that. And I think I must have, I've still got the original record now. It must be nearly worn out, because in them days, you got to remember, I was listening to a lot of thrash metal and heavy metal and everything, but that was always on my record player. So it holds a special place for me. And going back to what Gary was saying before about bands previous to that record, punk bands, you think of like Subhumans, you think of all the anarcho bands like Broken Bones, all the American early ones like the Dead Kennedys, and then you sort of got used to that sound. And even Bad Religion, as Gary was saying before, on the first album was very, poorly produced, but very sort of, rough sound and punk. Put that on, and it was just a game changer for me. It was like, wow, punk rock with harmonies, intelligent lyrics, a great production as well. Dave Bentley's bass is one of my favourites on it. It just chunks away really nicely on the album, and yeah, that was just me in love with Bad Religion forever, I think. But saying that, I did buy I think I bought the next maybe 5 or 6 albums after that, and then I sort of lost a little bit of, I lost them a little bit along the way, and sort of, as Gary was saying before, I think they'd hit that formula, and although they would slightly vary away from it every now and again, you always knew it was Bad Religion. But same with you, with all of you, I haven't listened to Suffer for quite a while, so putting it back on again this week has just made me, sort of really love it again. Favourite song is, what did I write down? I should know them all off by heart. Do What You Want, because the teenage me absolutely loved the lyric. I don't know if the billions will survive, but I'll believe in God when 1 or 5. And when I heard that, I was just like, that's brilliant. That is like, because when you're rebellious, and I still am now, I suppose, like, but when you're the teenager and you hear that sort of lyric, you think like, cute. And all the lyrics, like, once I got a dictionary out and realised what they were actually talking about, all the lyrics were absolutely brilliant. And all the harmonies. I did get to see them a couple of times over the years, but not with the a line-up on that album, unfortunately. I think they played in London once, maybe, with Pete Finestone. Going back to our conversation all about like people who influenced you, he was another drummer who massively influenced me, because he wasn't the best drummer in the world, but he was just, really sort of on the beat. Not fancy or anything like that. And I thought, I was listening to it as well, thinking, because you listen to a lot of metal bands and it's all technical, and then you listen to that and you think, I can do that. I can give that a go and do that, like, sort of, that Bad Religion type of beat, if you like. And the other favourite song of the album is called, what did I put it as? Oh, sorry, Best For You. Just because of the anthemic, sort of ends, everybody knows what's best for you. And a little bit later, after I bought stuff, I bought a video of them. I think it was live in Germany, called On The Way. And they play most of them songs off Suffer on that concert, and it's just really good. But yeah, but as Gary said before as well, the album cover as well is very iconic, where it's got like, the young boy sort of I don't think he's bursting into flames, but I think he's just, to me, it's like on a typical suburban American street, all nice and quiet, and everyone's conservative, and then this guy's come along and he's just like, I'm not taking any of that, I'm like sort of doing it my own way. So, was there anything else I was going to say about it? A solid album for me, and as I say, like, completely blew out all the other punk that I'd listened to in the past out of the water, and just sort of, although I still love listening to Subhumans and, all the early punk stuff, Dead Kennedys, what have you. But I think the production, I think, the harmonies, the intelligent lyrics, and the songwriting skills were just brilliant on this. I think everyone, depending on where you were, what stage in your life you listened to your first Bad Religion album, then, so, Gary was saying, was Stranger Than Fiction. Yeah. So obviously you listened to that one first, so that's your, like, sort of favourite one of you. Like, Carl, you listened to, you heard the song, didn't you? For me, it was like Suffer, because it's the first one I bought, closely followed. I think it wasn't that long to wait until, my memory's gone tonight, the next album come out.
No Control.
No Control,
yeah. And that's very similar to Suffer. It sort of follows on a little bit.
I think it's faster.
Yeah.
But I think if you listen to that, because I kind of did that process. I was like, well, I'm going to listen from Suffer, and I had to look at No Control, and it was like same number of tracks, pretty much the same length. And then I went to Against the Grain, and it was like, okay, 2 more tracks, so 17 tracks. A little bit longer, but it had that same kind of like flow. Like those 3 albums, I think, are almost like a triptych. You know, they are like they kind of complement each other really well, and they were 1 year apart, so it was a 3-year run.
I think as well, like when they went on, when they just started adding like too many members, and they had like 3 guitars and stuff, and I mean, you can't not pick on them now. I think maybe they should have called it quits a couple of years back, maybe. But I mean, that's just me. But I mean, I've seen them quite recently, and they're always really good live, and you know what you're going to get, and they deliver. You know, so okay. So should we all give it a score? Pick our favourite 2 songs off it, and then we'll give it a score out of 10. So I'll go first. My favourite 2 songs on it are Give You Nothing, and also Delirium of Disorder, which I think I mentioned before. My score out of 10 is 8 out of 10. So, Gareth, do you want to give yours?
Yep, I realise I jumped the gun on this now, but it's What Can You Do and Suffer are my 2 favourites, and I'm also going to give it 8 out of 10.
Gary?
Same. So 1,000 More Fools and Give You Nothing are my favourites, and I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Oh,
splitter.
Andy?
Okay, favourite songs, Do What You Want, and Best For You. And obviously, you know how much I love that. I'm not going to give it 10 out of 10 because that would be a little bit. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10 anyway. Yeah.
So I think overall, then we will probably say it is an 8.25. Is that right? Out of 10, which is a good score. And so, Gareth, do you want to introduce what we're going to talk about next week?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, next week I will be attempting to prove to you that the blues is number 1 with the John Spencer Blues Explosion classic, Orange.
Nice.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that next week. Thanks for watching our video. Enjoy your week and stay safe. See you soon. Bye-bye.